Welcome back to another Hair Groom Brainstorm in which we work with our second iteration. In the first iteration, we had some of those attributes that are similar to simulations like velocity and vel, in which they push the groom in one direction. And yes, we got a very uniform look, but now we want to try to see if we can artistically direct the individual curves that are growing in these bangs with the second iteration. So to see what we need to do to get that to work, let's dive into this brainstorm here now. In this example, I'm going to take my own custom line that I've made, and I'm going to add a transform so that I can control where I place it. And I'm going to grow hair out of a grid to see if I can use this line to control the shape of the hair groom. So the grid is very simple. It is only two primitives, and the hair gen growing from that will use a new input called guides, in which upstream you can have custom made curves come through and generate hair groom. So let's take a look with just this right now. I have these tiny little triangles, and that's because in my attributes and appearance tab, I've changed the whole hair profile to have a triangle shape. So it just cuts off into a thin little wedge. And also the length is only 1 centimeter. And that's why they look like that. So there we go. I'm going to leave it off at 1 centimeter. And now I'm going to use this second input. But I have this node here. It's grade. I'm going to read it to you later. Right now it's shut off. Let's just see what happens if we have this line come in. Well, I have an error. Why is that? Because I don't have the SkinPrim attribute, which is required on the guides. Now, what is that SkinPrim attribute? The SkinPrim attribute is a coordinate system with this, along with the SkinPrimUV, which we're going to need, such that each line coming in, it'll show you which primitive were we closest to, and where in space, in this coordinate system of UV, were we found, in order so we can find an influence radius to control which hair guides should be controlled by the incoming guide. So I'm going to turn on this guide skin attribute lookup, which will find those two attributes and pipe it into the hair generation node. There we have it. So now I still have those tiny little triangles, but I also have these really long triangles, which have that same appearance. Now, is it really the line? Let's find out. I'm going to go to my transform and just hit enter on the viewport. And now I can control where that line is in space. And there it is. Yes, the influence radius is controlling which hairs will mimic the shape and length of the input guides that is coming from upstream. Now that influence radius is in 3D space. It is. So if I was to drag up my incoming line, I could see that that radius is getting further and further away in 3D space from reaching that SkinPrim, and it's having no influence. So it is on us to create a solution in which we make sure that any guides that we make for controlling hair generation always snap to the surface. We're going to end up doing that in the second iteration. But for now, I just want you to see what happens here. Now, to make this even more clear that there are two different primitives, I have added this color node, which is going to give random color based on the skin primitive number. So if we go there, yeah, we can see we have these magenta and these beige. And once again, moving this transform across, I can take that line, and I am now growing hairs on either side of these two primitives that are available. Let's move to something just a little bit more advanced. Again, same setup. I have a line, and this line can be transformed. I have my guide skin attribute lookup, but I also have some other types of curves coming in which I have a Bezier curve, and I have a NURBS curve. Now the NURBS curve and the Bezier curve have additional points. If we take a look at, say, the Bezier curve for a start, and if I hit enter in the viewport, I can see, yes, it looks like there's 3 points here, but no, if you grab one of these, the handles actually count as additional points. And so this will not make sense when you need, say, a polyline in which all the points are along the length of the line. And it's the same thing with the NURBS curve. There's additional points, but these are to control the curvature of this line. So that also would not work. But we can get around this by using a convert node in which we convert all types of input into a polygon. Whereas, yes, there was a Bezier curve and there is a NURBS curve output available, but we want to turn these into polygon lines And if we took a look at that, if we look closely, you can see there's a little bit of this faceting edges here. And so now this is a polyline. Let's take a look to see, would this work if I'm going to put my switch node to the very first input, the line, and I'm going to use my transform to control where I am moving in space. And with the hair generation, set the viewport to that, the view flag to that. I'm going to move this. Yeah, this is the same as before. I'll even enable the color. But now what would happen if we were to switch inputs? If we were to switch to, say, that Bezier curve? There we have it. The same shape and the same length as the input provided above. Okay, does it work for the NURBS? It does. So this is very helpful for giving us artistic control over the kind of curves that we want to create using our hair generation node. And now just to drive this home, I've added a little subnet which contains some text in which I want to see that SkinPrim number, and I want to see that SkinPrimUV, the first and the second coordinates. So moving that to the front. Yeah. I'm on SkinPrim 0. Let's use the transform to move around. And if I cross the border, I move into SkinPrim 1. And just to help out with this, let's open up a geometry spreadsheet in which I'm looking at my primitives. And I have it selected here. I'm just going to look at the this last region. And yes, what SkinPrim numbers do we have available? We have a SkinPrim 0, and we have at the very bottom, we have a SkinPrim 1. So there are only 2 SkinPrims available in all the primitive attributes. It's only 2 numbers there, 0 and 1. And I can see them here as I move back and forth. But I also can see this coordinate system with the SkinPrimUV. I'm referencing the U and the V, and I want to try to move around to the opposite corners and see if I can recognize, because as we know, it should just go bound it between 0 and 1. So as I get to this bottom corner of the coordinate system, yes, I am approaching 0 and 0. If I move to this top corner, I am at 0 and 1. If I move to the opposite corner, I can get all the way to 1 and 1. And likewise, once I cross over, SkinPrim becomes from 0 changes to 1. And I can do that same coordinate check again. So these are the attributes needed in order to make any form of artistically controlled input for curves to work, such that the hair generation can grow curves that match not only the direction, but the length and the shape. And the last thing to understand is underneath the general, we have an influence radius, and if I drag this up and down, we'll see the amount of curves that get included in with that one input grows substantially. And as we drag down, the radius shrinks. So I hope this helps you to understand the attributes needed to artistically control using input curves. And we're going to try this out in the second iteration. Thanks for watching.